I want you to get ready for this amazing episode, my friends, because today we are talking to the phenomenal Lydia Lee in the podcast studio. Lydia she's not just a coach. She really is the work reinvention guru and the freedom instigator at Screw the Cubicle. Yes, her brand name is Screw the Cubicle, and I could not be more excited. But since 2013, Lydia has been the guiding force for hundreds, helping them break free from the golden corporate handcuffs and forge meaningful businesses that really align with the life that they truly desire. And guess what? Our conversation today is nothing short of a game changer. Brace yourselves, y'all, as Lydia dives deep into the transformative realm of identity shifts, navigating the noise of cultural norms and societal expectations to really carve out a bold and exciting new way of living and working in the future of work. I want you to be ready to be inspired, challenged, and enlightened as we unravel these secrets that Lydia Lee has for us on today's episode. Let's dive in. You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in. Thank you so much, Lydia, for joining me. You are a traveling bee of sorts. You are from Bali and Vancouver. I'm saying both because it's like you split your time and you're doing all the wonderful things that truly, when we get to the point of entrepreneurship, we naturally would probably look at someone like yourself and say, that's what I want to do. So I thank you so much, first of all, for spending your time with me today. It is not unnoticed and we all have busy lives. So podcast interviews are one of those many things that we just have to be intentional about. So thank you for being intentional and welcome.
Thank you. And I'm so glad, as we were talking before the recording, that I'm in your time zone-ish of this continent, because I've been in 3 continents and 5 cities in the last 45 days. And so it's really been lovely to unpack, be in my old stomping grounds of Vancouver, Canada. I'm enjoying the fall and the lovely foliage that I get to witness. So Bali has been my home for the last 10 years. Which is such a lifetime. And I'm certainly a sun chaser for sure. But I also really crave stability too. It's not, I'm not a backpacker. Those backpacking days are gone. I'm too old for that. I like stability. I love having a home. I love having community, but I also love having the adventurous travel that I can have, every single year. So it's been an adventure building that schedule, building a business that allows me to have that autonomy. But yeah, it's been a ride, and I'm glad that I'm a bit settled right now and having this interview with you so that we can, I can actually really be just sleeping in one bed for the next couple of months.
Listen, there's nothing like traveling and then crawling into your own bed after said travel, and you're like, on one hand, you're like, why do I even leave this bed? But on the other, it's coming. I love it. I love it. Where I would like to start is just kind of a quick overview on how you arrived at sort of where you are. And if we could just kind of dive deep and go there, just more so about the freedom that you've created for yourself, and also some of the mindset work that it takes to get to a place of operating the way that you do.
Yeah. So I celebrated my 10th year anniversary for Screw the Cubicle last month in September, which was really lovely. Perfect. And my work has changed a lot as well and evolved a lot from the year 1 to year 10. because I've evolved as a human, things that I think is more in tune with what it is that is my body of work has changed every year. It's kind of like an interesting relationship, isn't it? Work is a relationship that should be evolving. Actually, you should never just kind of rest on your loins and think this is it.
Yeah.
Because there's an exploration of, what that depth of work can be as you're growing as a human being for sure. And so, I've been really blessed to be working with really talented people that are kind of in mid-career, they've kind of done the climbing up the mountain, doing all the hard work to get to a position, to get to a place of status, perhaps in the industry that they come from. And perhaps they climbed that corporate ladder and the view isn't what they're expecting at the top, right? So there's a sort of like crossroad of like, oh, wait, I gave up all the stuff to achieve this milestone of better money or bigger position, or my weekends were gone because I went after this, bigger position. And now I'm not feeling as fulfilled. This may not be it for me. I know after the pandemic, for example, a lot of people had these realizations about, am I still on the right path? Because we're not asked to question that. Like if you're making good money and things look good on paper, yeah, you should be grateful, right? Like there's nothing to complain about. And then I think sometimes for some of us, right? Not all of us, but some of us might go a little tiny whisper of like, is this it? And are there other avenues of a pathway that I can reinvent and, go towards if I was to be creative about how I see my work, because sometimes job titles, we've been a doctor or been a academic professor for 20, 25 years, it's really hard to see life beyond, this is how I make an income. This is how I'm respected, right? So we sort of tend to look at, okay, I'll just look for another job in that industry. Oh, wait, I don't like the industry anymore. I don't like these things. So how do I get out of it? It's like a bad marriage that you're like, I like the stability, it's safe. It's the devil I know.
Right.
But it's not what my soul is yearning for. And that is the place I start with people, is identifying what's next, what can be next without you throwing the baby out of the bathwater, without you flushing all your expertise and experience and credentials down the drain, that there is this sort of creative moment we can take to reinvent our work, to look at how we can repurpose the skills and how we solve problems into the world and be the, architect of the life that we want to lead, so that we start to dictate what that job title should be and create that opportunity for ourselves rather than wait for someone to offer us a promotion or offer us the next job.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I would say that probably was true in my own life as well. When working in corporate, you get to a point of climbing the ladder in that industry or that sector. And so you think to yourself, it's the building, right? It's the people, it's the company that I'm with now. I can jump ship and I can go to a different company, not even realizing that this burnout or the thing that we are struggling with the most is the industry that we're in. And again, not having that creative sort of sense of freedom where we can repurpose and re-energize some of those places that we do feel a little bit of discontentment. So we make the jump and then we realize, yeah, hand up, I still feel the same way. It's kind of like when you move from one terrible relationship to another one, like right afterwards, like, yeah. Give you time and space. You have to give yourself time and space to kind of understand and evaluate what are those burning places that are just the source of discontentment. Because I don't think you can really do that when you just move to another place and you're doing the same job, just at a different place with different individuals, right? Nothing really has changed about yourself or the job. It's just the environment that you're in, right? So yeah, I definitely can source the fact that, and I think that's probably a lot of reason why people leave corporate and think I'm going to start a business of my own, right? Because they've just reached to the point of, I need to reinvent myself. I need to figure out a place where I feel a sense of belonging and I know it's not here.
Mm-hmm. And
so
then also you don't totally. And I think, you're so right to say that taking that break or that necessary pause before you jump into another role, even business, right? Business can sound really exciting. Grass is always greener. Okay, I can work in my underpants as an entrepreneur. It's great,
right.
But the one thing I know, because this is the mistake I made, is not taking that time to evaluate what are the ingredients of work besides money, besides opportunity, besides what I know how to do. What else? How can my work or my job give back to my life? And how do I want to operate if I was just I love your podcast, the CEO, right? How am I the CEO of my work, so that I decide what are the things that I spend my energy on, how I want to work with clients, what kind of clients do I even want to work with, and what is the boundaries of work that I want to specialize in and that has an impact in a bigger cause and a bigger mission that I want to have. These are deeper conversations that are not so paint by numbers. They are conversational. It has to be talked about. It takes time to uncover all of that because it's so much, we rarely are asked, right, in a corporate career every year, how do you feel about it? Are you still good with this? We don't. We just go, oh, as long as I get that promotion and my boss is happy, I'm on the right track. These are the only metrics we measure success around. We don't measure things like fulfillment. We don't measure things like, do I have enough time off for my children, or can I watch my kids grow up and not feel anxious on the weekend because I'm checking my emails constantly, right? And in a way that happened to me too, right? Like this is sort of how Screw the Cubicle began, actually. I never intended Screw the Cubicle to become a business. It was a blog in the beginning of time to document my identity crisis, making that transition from employee to entrepreneur, especially coming from a family of immigrants. My family didn't have a lot of money when we grew up. So like the fact that I got a 6-figure job, I was about to be made partner at my old job. Like this was all the hanging carrots that they're like, you would be a fool to not accept this. But internally, I knew this was not the route for me, even though everything on the outside looks correct, and it was so hard to explain that to people. I quit during a recession as well. So can you imagine when I had these conversations with friends, they're like, you should be grateful. We don't even have a job, So there's a lot of that shame and guilt that you can feel at times whenever you kind of don't really know, if you're making the right decision. And so when I was on this path to seek out what is that answer for what's next, it was so funny because I would go to, would pay for like top dollar career counselors, to help me. And everything was very practical. It's like, let's look at your resume and what you've done before and try to just be there, or I would do an assessment and it would spit out like top 10 careers that I should do based on my education and whatever. It's like a very linear way of looking at careers, right? And then I was like, oh, that's not it either. Then I had to hire a therapist because I had to figure out what I want. And then I had to hire a business coach. And then that person helped me with business. So when the whole blog started, I started to talk about like actually how I made my own framework, almost taking a little bit from the career counselor, a little bit from the therapist, a little bit from the business coach, and created my own journey of like, what does life and work look like for me? And I really wish I could just have gotten it in one portal, one person or one area. And that's kind of how it was born. People started reading the blog and they said, hey, do you do this type of coaching where you can help me think about my life and also apply, like be a career counselor to help me figure out how I can reuse these skills and also help me do a business model around that for my lifestyle choices. And so then I thought, oh, well, there is a demand for this. And so, that was sort of how it started with kickstarting, my own opportunity to go, oh, this could be something I could do for work.
Yeah. Sometimes our personal development does become our business development, right? Like,
yeah, your pain is the blessing sometimes, yes, isn't it?
Absolutely. When you were just reflecting back to when you were talking about wrestling, with even giving yourself that time, when you were working in corporate, what did that feel like? What are some of the conversations you were having with yourself in order to really help yourself understand, is this the best move that I'm about to make? And can you talk about some of the mindsets, that you had at that time?
A big sort of turning event happened for me in my life to be the wake-up call. It's a sort of like the breakthrough moment, or the breakdown moment, I should say, that became a breakthrough eventually, but it was a very painful health experience I had to go through in order for me to go, oh, something's not working, right? And so I wish I sort of had these moments of like, I should be doing more for myself. No, I was a workaholic. I was someone that was working 65 hours a week, really going for the kill of that partnership and the salary increase. I was 27 years old at the time, many years ago, and just really wanted to prove myself in the marketplace and do more than everyone else. And then I had a health crisis that happened during work in Russia. I was traveling a lot with the Embassy of Canada. I was in international education. This is my industry previously, and been on the road 6 months out of the year. So just that is a lot, right, to take. And I was also working in a very toxic workplace. It was very money driven. There weren't any needs being met. There were no culture in that company. It was a very profit driven sort of way, right, of working. And I literally had a meltdown in a Russian hotel room in the winter. I developed temporary agoraphobia for 3 days. My nervous system completely shut down. And I needed to take a sabbatical because that was the one thing that forced me down. Like my mind was like, no, you keep going. Everything, this is normal. This is what people do. But my body was like, we're going to take you out, girl. We're going to have to put you down so that you have to learn from this. And this was a painful but very necessary moment of a turning point in my life. And then through that, thankfully, I met a wonderful therapist, and she is the therapist I continue to work with till today. She helped me really uncover what that feeling of sadness and depression and misalignment was, that actually I did enjoy my job. My job was actually really fun and lovely, and I did what I was good at. But it was the environment and how I was performing in that job that was causing me a lot of unhappiness and a sense of also betraying myself. Like the values that I say I wanted in my life, like quality time with family or, hobbies that I wanted to pursue and things like that were not being activated because I was prioritizing work in ways that were also my own responsibility. I didn't have to answer that email at midnight. I did not have to say my phone will be on all weekend. There was a sense of responsibility that I had to take as well, so that it's less about, I just have shitty bosses and, that's it. It wasn't, yes, it was that. I don't want to work for these people anymore. But I also really needed to take accountability for how I created those non-boundaries, how I allow people to treat me, how I treated myself, in the entire thing. And that I was chasing this medal, this award of like status and money in ways that were very unhealthy for me. And taking that partnership would mean more of that. So is that truly what am I chasing after the right thing? So she worked with me for a long time. And then as that relationship developed, or my relationship to self, I should say, really developed, that allowed me to sort of see ways that I could still continue to work and pay the bills and make different pitches. So actually one of my exit strategies in the beginning of time was actually convincing my bosses at the time to be my first consulting clients. So that I would switch from full-time, 70 hours a week work to consulting and having to, go through multiple hard conversations of picking projects and painting this picture of like, you can still work with me and I can still produce, but at these boundaries, at these terms, while I train someone to replace me in other areas. They're not completely happy about it, but it was something like, okay, there's a win-win situation here. That doesn't always work out, for everyone, but it was certainly a card I could play and had confidence to play once I worked out how I wanted to position that and allowed myself a bit more time and space to then work on a side business, right? Which then I did. My first business was still in the same industry, but an agency that I created on my own, right? So the mindset change that was huge for me during that healing, first year was rocky. It was just like, who am I? What am I?
The first year of therapy is always the worst, is what I tell people.
Oh my gosh. It's like hang on for the ride because it's a going. The train is on full speed. It made me think a lot about my family values, just even growing up in a family where, we, as immigrants, we had to prove ourselves, did we, to get that job and my parents started from scratch in very junior roles, even though they had senior roles back in Malaysia because their degrees, anything didn't matter, right? So we started from scratch. So the story and the narrative that was given to me is always like, you better work twice as hard as everyone else there because they're not going to recognize you. And you got to do that. That's how you get seen. So it doesn't matter how successful you are. You keep on trucking and you keep on working blood, sweat, and tears because that's how you get seen, So having to unravel that, unlearn that, understanding my story is different from my parents' stories, all of that was a whole healing process of, letting go of some of these limiting beliefs or what I think I had to do to be successful, and then allowing myself to repaint that picture. What does it look like for me in my life to have work and life be in alignment, and what are some steps I could make today that are in my vicinity of grasp, not something like launch $1 million business or,
Sure.
something that is completely unrealistic. Like, what assets do I have in front of me, that I can reactivate or lean on that can allow another door to open. And one of the assets was, hey, I worked my ass off in that company. I've proven myself. How can I use that social equity? How can I use that proof in the pudding of all the money I've made them and say, I can still do that, but in these terms? Could that be the first card I activate instead of just quitting and starting a business and then having anxiety about how to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
So small, sustainable steps and kind of just tapping on a few doors to open up a bigger door. And that's sort of what I did to slowly, small, tiny actions rather than big, impulsive choices. I think that was a huge one. It's still something I do. I'm a calculated risk girl. I'm not a jump off the cliff and hope the parachute opens kind of woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so good. One of the things that you said that I just want to camp on for a minute is you said the things I thought I had to do. What were those things? When you kind of work through sort of 1 through 5, I always say a business 1 through 5 is just, it's the time where you're figuring out yourself, especially if you're coming from corporate with an identity like you and I probably have had together. You're figuring out yourself. You're figuring out kind of this balance of how much do I work? How little do I work? What is enough? What is not enough? And then you throw social ideals into the mix, especially if you are a woman with a family or, responsible for sort of your family's mental and physical well-being. What are some of the things that in those years you found yourself sort of showing up with that now when you look back, you're like, oh, honey, if you only knew you didn't have to do that, right? If you only knew to pass it on to someone else or not leave corporate with that, what were some of those things?
It really came down to a lot of the stuff that I still have to mindfully work on today, which is being a recovering people pleaser. I thought that the way that you are, compassionate and a team player and all the things that are the qualities that I want to exude, right, in the world, that I'm collaborative and, those things. How I defined that was, I have to be available anytime anyone needs me. And let me tell you, that thing came with me. Whether I left corporate or not, it came with me to my business. And actually, what happened was in 2015, in my highest revenue year of my business, I had my second burnout meltdown, another health scare. And so, as the old saying goes, you can take the you can take the girl out of corporate, but you can't take the corporate out of the girl sometimes.
Yep.
And that's what I did. I mimicked my version of success, which is people pleasing, being available. If someone wanted something I didn't offer, I'll make it happen. I'll figure it out just to land the sale or just to do the thing, just to please that person. If a client wanted me to tailor this and that, I said, yeah, okay, fine. I'll do it because that makes you happy. And then actually ended up giving more work to myself because it wasn't the thing I was selling, but I needed to please this person. Or taking on clients that would just pay me, but I had this sneaky suspicion that we weren't the right match. But I wanted to not be a failure to her. And so, it's these sorts of things that happen in my business. And then I ended up building, on paper again, a very successful business. I had a big team. Had many offers every year. I ran retreats, all sorts of things. The things that a blueprint of what they tell you a coaching practice should look like, all the things. And then I had this meltdown, which caused me to take a break from my business and take a sabbatical for a few months. And what I realized was, even though I was very successful, I was again not focusing or understanding my version or definition of how I want to make an income and what were, the ingredients of my business and my work that maybe didn't need to look like everyone else's. Maybe, I don't want a big empire. What if I don't want to manage a team at all? Actually, that's what I discovered. Love working with people. Hate managing people. So those meetings I'd have every week, did not love them. Sucked the living energy out of my soul. The having 5 to 6, 8 offers a year that more successful? Great on paper. I was burnt out delivering those offers. And more doesn't always equate to better. And then I'm so glad you talked about the idea of enoughness. What is enough? What's enough money? What's enough time? What's enough clients? What's enough offers? And I think in the marketing business world that you and I belong to, there is this message, isn't there, that bigger is better. Now, before it used to be 6-figure businesses as a goal. Now it's multi-million-dollar businesses. If you're not doing this, you're not everywhere. You don't have 2 podcasts and this and that and being on TED Talks. You're not successful. This is the only example we get to see in the online world, which is more is more. Scale bigger, do more, have more clients, more money. Everything's more. But no one really questions, and I certainly didn't. Is that where I want to go?
Right.
You could have all the money in the world and no time also to spend it or utilize it for the quality of your life, right? So from that moment, it changed my entire business and even my entire coaching practice of my framework about how I coach at that point, because I needed to do that first for myself of understanding how am I built? And what's funny is that in my personal life, I was a practicing minimalist. This is what made me very happy in real life. Travel does that. You know how much, like when you travel in a very small bag, you're like, there's not much I need, So I was, personally just like eradicating things, being very mindful of what I do spend money on and just being less of a consumer, right? But still buying things, but like, being very mindful about what it means to have that thing and does it really actually improve my life? But in my business, I was a maximalist. I did it all to be successful. They told me I have to be on every social media platform. I was on every social media platform. And so I was like, no wonder I had this identity crisis between real life me and then this business me that needed again to do more to be seen.
Yeah.
And so since then I have I really enjoyed a much more fruitful business, which is what I call like a tiny business, a cozy business, a minimalist model that gives back to my life, that I earn enough money for what I need. And I have one thing that I do in maybe a couple versions of that, but I stay in this masterful focus of these are my boundaries. Sometimes I do a little bit more, sometimes I don't. I go with the seasons of my life. At some years I work less, some years I don't. I don't need to compare revenue to last year. It's what I need this year, and allowing myself to accept that my version of success looks different every year. And it also looks different to other coaches. And it's good on them if they want to make a big business. But what I want is something that gives me time to enjoy my life and work minimal hours every week, but be very focused in the quality of the work that I deliver instead of having 100 things on my plate.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said for not showing up the way in which society expects us to, right? Because the societal idea is what you just said, which is be on everything, exposure.
Yeah.
If people know you, if people know your brand, you will get the masses, which for some people and their business model, that is what they need to generate the revenue. That is what they are geared for. And they do want to build multi-million-dollar businesses. And that is really lovely. But I think there's this perception and reality that is often being misconstrued where if you are in year 1 through 5 of your business and it starts not to look that way, you think that your business is failing.
It's totally true.
You think that you're not worthy of even showing up on social media because what does it matter? Nobody's going to see me anyway. And I think we get this idea that if we just keep grinding, if we just keep showing up, and if we just keep missing dance recital or keep missing, grandma's 80th birthday, that they will know how hard I worked. They'll understand. They'll get it. And part of the realization that I had to come to, especially in my business, is do they really get it? Because what they're seeing is I'm missing. What they're seeing and experiencing is I'm not there to light up the room. I'm not there to have genuine conversations with somebody. I'm not there for her to, and I'm getting teary-eyed because those are all things that we had to take PTO for in corporate. We had to explain ourselves and why we had to leave at 4 p.m. when everybody else leaves at 6, right? And when we leave corporate, that is like I want those things. I want to experience things. But then on the other side, we have society that is saying, well, there's no sleep. There's no sleep for the rest. Your business can't sleep. Do more, be more. And it's so much, right? And all I can see is like just this blackness that gets absorbed into our business that we get so focused on, are we generating enough revenue?
Yeah.
So that I can do that thing, but we're not realizing that we're never going to generate enough revenue because the revenue that we're generating is demanding this, right?
Yeah.
It's this lifestyle that it's demanding. Yeah. So if we're asking for more, that revenue is going to ask for more from us.
Exactly.
So it's not going to be sustainable. You know, like you can build a multi-billion-dollar business. That's fine. But can you sustain who you are as a person? And I would caution and say no, you know, and I think you probably would feel the same, but I just, there's a level of, and yeah, maybe it took us a few years to kind of yet another breakdown, you know, but I think there's something powerful and it resonates with a lot of the other guests that I have on my podcast is that there often is a mental or physical crisis that happens in order for us to hear the slap and go, you have got to wake up, you know? Yeah. So you have cultivated this beautiful little business model that suits you for all of your needs. And so when you were, you know, revving up to, I call it the rev up to slow down kind of situation that happens, how do you feel now? And what kind of words of encouragement can you give somebody that is just craving a little more simplicity, a little more, I need to get out of this mindset of thinking more is more.
Yeah. It's hard. It's not easy. I wouldn't want to say, right, that this recognition of what is even simple, because most entrepreneurs are high achievers. Okay. Yep. We are high achievers. And so that trait is beautiful when we are creating things that are going to be really serving to our audience. And, you know, that quality of work will always be there from that perfectionism, from that high achieving attitude. Not so helpful with that trait when we're trying to feel worthy of this type of success that we wish could happen for us. Right. And I think the first part is just having this grace in the beginning when you see yourself overworking, you see yourself not going your your daughter's dance recital, you see yourself missing out on the family barbecues. Like there's, especially women, because I work with a lot of women who are moms as well, like the mom guilt's real, you know, women guilt is real. And it's like, I don't get that from my male clients, by the way. They don't ever feel that shameful. And it's just societal narrative again that, you know, women are the caretakers. We are the ones that we don't show up for certain things. You're not really living up to your role, you know? And I think women especially need to give more grace to ourselves that when we do catch ourselves making some of these choices, we don't want to continue making. That is the first step in awareness of that. Oh, that didn't feel good. I didn't like ending the day that way. I didn't like rushing back for dinner and giving half of myself to my family. You know, it's just being able to go, oh, it's like kind of seeing yourself like you're in a movie, you know, say, oh, I didn't like that plot line. Yeah, I'm going to rewrite that chapter tomorrow.
I tell everybody it's the 500-foot view. You know, you gotta pull out and, you know, now you're in an airplane and looking at your life. What do you see?
Yes, exactly. The minute we're out of our own bodies and seeing ourselves from the top, whatever, from the sides, it kind of feels like, okay, I can witness that and say that's not for me. And that didn't feel right for me. To just not make it about, you know, I'm a bad person. I'm a horrible mom. I'm this and that. Because that identifies it again. It makes it like I chose to do that. But no, there's a lot of things in the mix, you know, of what has happened to you and what happens in society that makes us do these things, you know? And if you have the awareness to take a pause, sometimes to go, oh, that didn't feel right. How will I do that differently the next day? Or what tiny tweak can I do right now that will help me improve that? Not maybe fix it right away. You know, if you're already working a lot of hours, it's going to be hard to just go like, you know, I'm just going to work 10 hours next week. You're going to have a heart attack and a panic attack because the change doesn't happen that way. Behavior change, as James Clear has always put it, is tiny incremental effort that equates to bigger results down the road. So a tiny tweak could even just like having a timer for when I do sprints of work. And then when the timer goes off, I'm done. It doesn't mean I don't work. I mean, I might still work that 50 hours this week, but at least I might shave it down a little bit or have a little break or have a walk with my kids or whatever in between as a way of interrupting the pattern of my behavior so that little by little, I become the person I want to become from these tiny, as James Clear says, tiny votes, right? Tiny changes becomes tiny votes to the person you want to become. So grace is really important because the minute we feel shame, we will not do anything.
Yeah.
We will procrastinate. We will stick to what we know because change is hard. And if you're going to shame that, and not give yourself that grace to make mistakes. I mean, we raise babies and kids, right? So we don't do that. If a kid makes a mistake, we're not like, hopefully anyway, you go, right. Oh, okay, what happened there? What do you think? We're gentle. We're gentle to say, you're okay. You're innocent. Like, let's do it again. And sometimes I do that. I say that out loud. I'm like, it's okay, Lydia. It's okay. Because it is that inner child, isn't it? That needs that nourishing because we feel like we've done something wrong. That comes from a childhood thing. It comes from the people pleasing came from, my family dynamics, right? So being able to be gentle and talk to ourselves that way, I think is really important. And know that everything that you try out doesn't have to be permanent. That's the other thing I would leave people with. Everything is like an experiment. Everything can be like, you make that choice for a time limit. That's what helped me move to Bali, by the way. Like the idea of moving my entire life there was like, no. But if I said, I'm just going to go for 3 months and just see what it's like. If things don't work out, come back. Things don't change, it's fine. But if I said, I'm moving and it's the decision I have to make for the rest of my life, I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not even going to try. It's too big and daunting. It's too fearful. So we need to kind of have calculated risks, right? Like, okay, I'm going to try this new way of working. I'm going to try this boundary just for this week or just for this client and see what happens. And then if it works, great. If not, I can tweak and just smaller, gentler, tinier action and seeing how things go so that we try things on for size and know we can always choose another door if we need to. So exploration, experimentation, and graciousness, I think would be a good one to leave people.
I love that. I love that. And it's so much worthwhile to think of yourself and your life as an experiment, because there are so many new things I know that I learn about myself when I say, I'm just going to try it. And if it doesn't work, if that launch fails, great. Awesome. What did I learn during that time? And let's do it again because that looked really fun, but also what are we going to adjust for the next one? But I think it's also sort of this sense of what we get from other entrepreneurs that sell us the thing, right? So if it's, I have this top secret email, we're going to generate 80 emails and it's going to, yield XYZ results.
Yeah.
It's like, how many times did they fail and reinvent themselves? Like that is the space that I want to be living in with other folks in entrepreneurship. Like I want to live in the mess with you and I want to see the mess because 9 times out of 10, when we see whatever it is out there, Amy Porterfield, love her to death. But when you see her do launches and classes and things, this came with 15 years of exploration. So who are we, right, to show up in the same space and be like, I should be operating this way on day one because that's how Amy Porterfield is operating.
Exactly.
We miss sort of that connection between day one and 15 years.
I always say it's like you are a great 1 trying to emulate a great 10. Way of going through school. You're in a different stage. There's things to be inspired about for sure. But where you're at, then the different resources, different time, the capacity, the knowledge and wisdom is a different place, And I think, maybe more entrepreneurs need to talk about that, where instead of, because there is also this thing, isn't it? It's like this manipulative marketing thing that happens sometimes in online marketing, which is like, do my 10-step blueprint and you too will be a 6-figure earner, and like follow me and it's my guru status, that allows me to teach you. Be very wary of people that say that. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is, What you want to learn from are people that are willing to be in that mess with you, be transparent about their lives too, that aren't people with all the answers and to also be that you can ask questions. Even when you pay someone and they're the person that's smarter than you can always say, is that right for me? Here's what I think I know how to do. Here's my strengths. And you give me a different way of operating. You don't have to accept things as status quo, and that's something I wish I did more when I was learning from different mentors and things, is to sometimes go, oh, that's for me. That's not for me. I don't have to follow that like the Bible, like that. Everything is flexible to, again, having our own voice in the journey we want to take.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about something fun, which is, what are the types of people that really set you on fire that you work with?
One of the things that brings me so much pleasure in my job right now is I really absolutely love the people that I work with. And partly because of the reason that the common thread of the belongingness between them is they really care about meaningful work. They really care about contribution. And I think it's a very different character profile of a client that will do the teamwork to understand who they are and how they show up for others. And when they get that sweet spot right for what is that meaningful work that's purposeful and profitable for them, it's like the pathway really gets easeful rather than this fighting against things I kind of can do but don't want to do. And then they really deliver and offer really beautiful solutions in the world that I love seeing, this ripple effect, of when a community comes together and produces great work together, rather than just like looking good. I always say, stop trying to look good in your business, like having the fancy Instagram and the nice headshots for your website. Like, be good at the work you do. And that takes time. Deep work takes time. And I love it when people invest in that. And then when they do, money comes too. It's kind of how that happens sometimes. If you're good at what you do and you care about people and you care about the well-being of others, business can feel less transactional and a lot more about contribution and community, which I have, really appreciated as part of my work too.
I love that. I love that. So if somebody is on the bandwagon and they want to go deep, how do we get in touch with you?
One of the favorite things that people love doing as a sort of intro to my work, and also an answer that they might be seeking for, is my quiz. My quiz is basically called, what business should I start? Based on my personality.
I love it.
And I focus on service-based businesses, I should say. So if you have this feeling that you want to create a service, it could be, it doesn't have to be like one-on-one all the time. When I mean, you could be a consultant, a strategist, educator, all sorts of, so many different business models for service-based. But sometimes it's hard to pinpoint what model of work is best suited and in alignment with my values and the way I want to operate, my natural tendencies. So I help people kind of understand what's their genius zone, focus, service-based model based on their personality and based on their strengths. So it's a very easy 9-question quiz you can do in like less than a minute. But people have told me that the sort of result and how I explain that model and then the consequent sort of educational content that comes with that of how you show up this way for business, or a meaningful business, I should say, has helped them to really simplify that route to get there without the distraction of the fancy, bright colored lights that they see all the time of what they need to happen, and be more focused on the human side of being a good business owner, rather than I need to have snazzy things so that I get seen and noticed. So that would be a really good place to start. You can find that on my website at screwthecubicle.com. If you want some really deep education, start with my YouTube channel. I have over 500 videos on that channel that goes from corporate transition to meaningful business building to solopreneurship strategies to all the mindset stuff that happens when we make that leap.
I love it. I love it. Again, thank you so much for all of your knowledge and just your heart and soul of pouring into not only just your business, but humanity as a whole. And I wish you so much love on your travels.
Thank you.
I aspire to have that. That is my goal.
If you ever come to Bali, I will be more than happy to host you.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds lovely. Well, I will leave all the links to everything for Lydia in the show notes. And again, Lydia, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for spending time with me.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth, or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.